Hi there, my name is Elizabeth and I like to sew smart. I also like a really tidy sewing room. Now today I'm going to show you one of my most valuable little pieces in my sewing room, which is right here, and it's a scrap catcher. And I have my pincushion on the top, nice flat surface. I lay my little scissors or my unpicker on there, and nice big bag at the bottom to take all the threads and all the cottons, bits and pieces off your patchwork. So let's get started and make the scrap catcher. To make the scrap catcher, you will need all of these things that I have laid here on the table. You will need some main fabric, some lining fabric, which you'll cut all the pieces from. You will need a 6-inch ceramic tile, just an ordinary one from somewhere like the hardware shop, and a 6-inch piece of heavy card that goes on the top of that, plus a little bit of braiding and your lightweight wadding. So we're going to start making the base, which the little pincushion sits on. Now to make that nice and padded, we need to take a 6-inch square of lightweight wadding. I'm just going to put a little bit of glue on the top of the tile. You can use craft glue, any kind of craft glue that will just stick the wadding down. A bit more. Don't be too generous because it will seep through either your wadding or your fabric when you come to stick it onto the card. So we're just going to put that there. I'm going to put the piece of wadding on the top of the ceramic tile. I'm going to leave that to dry, and then on the top of that, the top of my scrap catcher is the lining piece of fabric. I've cut a square, so once that has dried off a little bit, I'm going to stick that onto there, turn it over, stick it all onto the back all the way round, and leave it to dry off completely. I'll repeat with the top fabric, your main fabric. Do exactly the same thing. A little bit of glue on the card, turn it over, glue it on the inside, and leave them until they're nice and dry. And by the time you've made the rest of your scrap catcher, they'll be ready to form and put together with your braid on. The first step, now I've got my baseboards drying off. This will be the collar, the cuff that goes around the top. So with right sides, we're going to put right sides together. I've got two pieces here. So we'll put right sides together, and I will sew all the way using a scant 1/4 inch seam all the way around there, leaving this top piece open. Clip the corners as you sew very gently so that when you turn it inside out, it has a nice sharp edge. I've stitched around, I turned my little collar, I've stitched it inside, ironed it through, and I've also top stitched about between an eighth and a 1/4 inch round there. Now this is going to go on the front of my bag. Now when I put it down on here, you'll see that it doesn't reach the edge either side. That's because there's going to be a seam allowance there, and I will pin that onto the top of my fabric. But before I do that, I need to put the wadding, lightweight wadding, underneath, because I'm going to sew through all thicknesses for this. And it's interesting because on the pattern, I've got a pattern piece from my pattern that's in my Etsy shop. There's a gathering line. It's marked where you gather the bottom. When you have to gather the bottom, that's because you need fullness at the front of your bag. The back is straight, but the front needs to be gathered to make the pocket. So I'm going to just lay that on there, pin the collar on the top, starting at the edge. It does stretch a little bit, which it's meant to. So I'm going to pin that on and stitch that onto the top through all the layers, through the wadding. Don't put the lining in at the moment, don't do anything to the lining, just stitch this collar onto the top here. That's your next move. I've stitched the collar on using a scant 1/4 inch seam through the wadding. I have run a gathering seam through there, which I've flattened out for now. What I've done is I have folded over my work, marked halfway with a little friction pen mark. Now, because the back is going to go on and they're going to go right sides together, I've done the same thing with the back, finding the center point at the bottom. I'll put those two together, pop a little pin in there. I will pin the top sides here as well. Just pin that together just to hold it, and those two as well. Bring that up to the top there as well. Just pop a pin in that. Now you can see the bag is forming, but of course this doesn't fit. So in order for me to make it fit, I need to draw up the bottom gathering until it actually comes around and fits. Keep drawing it up. Try and get it even on both sides, and then I'll pin all the way around. Just pin it until it's a nice fit. So that's nearly right for the bottom there. So you can see it will be gathered, it will be full, and I'll do the same on the other side. Pin it and pin it there. Just gathering the bottom edge up, which is almost perfect there already. So it's gathered, even though this is inside out, you can see it's gathered nicely, nice and full. So I'll stitch all the way around, catching all the layers in, and if necessary you can trim off a little bit of your wadding if you want to, but it really isn't necessary at this point. So that's my bag, inside out, ready to stitch. So this is the back panel. I've stitched it on now to the front. I'll turn it inside out so that you can see exactly how it goes. Nice gathering across the bottom there. I have a piece of cotton which I'll snip off. But that's the front of the bag, all done. That's the back. And I'm now going to repeat exactly the same thing for the lining, but there's no wadding attached to the lining, and I'm just going to gather between there and there, which I've marked on the front piece of the lining, attach the back, and then I'll come back and show you how to put one inside the other to complete it. Stitched my lining together just the same way, so I've now got two pieces that look pretty much the same. So I need to put the lining inside the bag. To do that, we have to put right sides together on the inside. And those two back seams need to line up because they're going to be left open. I'm going to pin them and leave those seams open. Pin it together because the hinge to the bag will go through there, that fits onto the base at the top. So just lining up those seams. If you can see, you just got to bring them in and line them up. You can, if you choose, which is a good idea, just open them up to make them a bit flatter when you sew over them. Pin it through there. So this one again is going to go like so, going to be nice and opened, and a pin is going to go through there. Pin that one further around. So I'm going to pin this all the way around the top now. Tuck the collar inside. So I will now sew across the front from the back seam one side to the back seam the other side, all the way around. Use a reasonably generous 1/4 inch seam to do this because you've got a fair amount to catch in, and then I can go through that gap and turn it right side out. I've turned my bag the right way. It still has the opening for the lining and the main bag. Now I'll lay that down there so you can see it. I'll bring that in a little bit, I'll press it in a bit more. To make the hinge, which is this piece here, I take a small piece of fabric, I think it's about 7 by 4 inches this piece, and I'm going to sew it together, 1/4 inch seam, turn it to the right side, and I'm going to push that seam open but push it to the back so that I'm going to slip it in here before I sew all around the top edge, catching in this open piece that I left at the back, and it will be ready to be slipped in between the top and the bottom piece of the base, and then I'll show you how we put the braiding on round to cover it all up. I've inserted the little tab at the back. I measured approximately across the back. You can see I've top stitched it, catching in all of that edge. Looks nice and neat. It's top stitched around the top there as well. Now if I lay that down, it's approximately, I think it's approximately 6 inches, which it is. So I need now to put this in between my tiles. So that's my bottom tile. So I'll go there and there. So we're going to put that in the middle there. I'm going to leave 1.5 inches, 1.25 inches, or 1.5 inches there. I'm going to glue this piece and this piece. I'll put a little bit of glue in between as well. Stick that onto there. Then I'm going to let that dry for a few minutes, and then I'll put glue all over that and some on this piece and put the two together. A good idea to remember is if you've got the top folding on the left and the right, put the top folding on the top and the bottom when you put them together. So I'll put them together like that, and then when it's dried off, which will take a little while, it takes about, I would leave it probably an hour or so, maybe a bit longer if it's nice and warm. Then I'll put the braid on around here. I'll show you how the braid goes on around the edge to finish that off. All that remains to be done then is for us to make up the little cushion that goes on the top. I'm going to put some glue just along here. I will put it all the way around, but I will move it before I put it all the way around. This is just so that you can see. Make sure that you don't over glue it, but at the same time you need to have sufficient to stick the braid on. So this will cover both of your layers, your bottom card and your tile. So just about put that much on all the way across the front. Make sure it's just in there. And I'm going to now move this and put it all the way around. It helps if you can elevate your scrap catcher just a little bit. I've got this off the front so that I don't get any glue on the table or anything else. So now I'm just going to put the glue all the way around the back edge, and then we'll put the braid on. I'm going to start at the middle, at the back, with my piece of braid. It's 27 inches or 70 centimeters. I'm just going to stick it down in the center, press it down all the way around. Now this glue that I'm using, it dries clear, so I'm not worried if I can still see a little bit of glue. Right across the front, make sure it covers my corners. I'm going to bring it down this side, take it right round to the back. Now I've got to cut this at the back to make a nice neat join. So you can, if you like, put a little something on the back where the join is, just to cover the ends, but they do join pretty well actually. So I'm just going to take a pair of scissors and snip this. Oops, wrong way. I need to come this way. And press that in to the piece at the back, making sure they fit together nicely, which they do. Press it down all the way round. Make sure that at the front you're covered. It's just to hide the gap between the two layers, but it also gives it a really pretty finish. So just straighten it up. It will stretch a little bit as you're putting it on, so don't worry if you can't get it on in the time. You can always add a little more glue. Just be very careful because it gets a bit sticky. So there's a join coming together at the back just here. It's joined in that spot and it's on all the way around. You need to bring that down a bit, so what I'll do is I will just take a pin and just move that piece of braid to the bottom, and on this side you can just see there's a little bit of the edge. Yeah, just take it down, check all the way around, it's nicely covered. Check at the back as well, needs to come down just a little bit. Once you've got the braid on, it's very easy just to manipulate it. So here we go, nice there, bit of glue but that will wipe off. So that is your braid now fitted nicely. See it there. And all we've got now to do is the cushion for the top. I've cut the fabric for the top of the cushion that goes on the top. Now because I've now got this all nice and neatly together, and you can always put a little dab of glue if you've got a fancy braid and it sort of might fray or anything, you put a little dab of glue on that, but it's all nice. Take your time in getting that straight. Now the cushion is, my cushion is 7 by 5.5, and to make the cushion, because the cushion is going to be stuck on the top here, but to make that you need that piece of fabric, fold it in half, and you're going to stitch, I've got a spare piece here, stitch along here, leaving a gap of around 1.5 inches there, stitch out, double stitch out there and there so that when you turn it eventually it doesn't unravel. I'm going to bring that to the middle, see that's your gap. I've pressed the seam, thumb pressed the seam open, there's my 1.5 inch gap just here, and now I'm going to stitch down that side and down that side, clip the corners and turn that inside out, ready to put the stuffing in. So I turn my cushion to the right side, I've started stuffing it. Now you can use, you've got the gap there of course, you can use toy stuffing. If you haven't got toy stuffing, then take a little bit of polyester wadding or wool wadding and snip it into little strips and pack that in. You need to pack it in fairly hard because when you have the surface for your pins to go in, you do need that to be quite sturdy. And when that's nice and packed nicely hard, take it right out as far as you can to the corners, hand stitch this little gap here, hand stitch it closed because we're going to put some glue on there, a little bit of glue on the board, and then that is going to be popped onto there. When it's dry, you're all ready to go. I've put a line of glue there so it starts to get a bit tacky. I'll put the glue on the back here, just along the same spot, and it also seals off your little gap that you closed up. Try and make it the same width. There. And now I'm going to try and put that, I'm sorry that you can't see this, I'm going to put it there. I'll move it just a little bit so that I centralize it just there, and I will press that down for a few minutes until it dries, well, until it starts to bond. Just press it down. You can weight it down with something if you like. It doesn't take very long because remember you're sticking fabric to fabric. go. I will leave that to dry. Your scrap catcher is now finished. The cushion is glued onto the top nice and safely, and this space here you can use for your little scissors or your thimble. So you can make them for a gift. You could make them for your sewing friends when you want something nice to be giving to them. You can make them for your stalls, and they're really easy to put together if you just follow the directions. Now the pattern for this is in my Etsy shop, so go and have a look at it and look at all the other patterns I've got in there, and remember to give us a thumbs up and subscribe if you'd like to see more projects and videos like this. We'll see you next time.